do you like your job? Maybe a better question is, how do you feel about your job? Do you like to go into work? Do you like the people that you work with? Is it an exciting workplace? Is it your dream job? Is it what you thought of when you started your maybe degree plan or your career path? Is it what you were thinking? Or has your job become, like many people's jobs, just a job, and not a job really that you like that much? As a matter of fact, you may hate your job, but you also may feel stuck in your job. The economy's getting a little bit tighter during our times, and so the idea of just leaving a job you're not satisfied with to go to another isn't an option for a lot of people anymore. Matter of fact, a lot of people are just absolutely concerned about whether they're going to be able to keep this job that they don't particularly like. So what is the solution? Well, there was a man by the name of John Christensen that was looking at this very thing. And he realized that so many people were living a subpar life, and a big part of that was their job, because some people's lives, 75% of their working hours consisted of either getting ready for the job, driving to the job, being at the job, and then coming down and winding down from the job. And so nearly 3/4 of their waking hours were consumed very often by something they didn't enjoy. And quite frankly, maybe consumed by something that the people who are working around them didn't enjoy them being there in the first place, because maybe they didn't add an awful lot to it. So he wanted to find out the solution, and he started thinking about these things, and as chance happened, he came across a fairly remarkable work environment. Some of you are familiar with it, and you should be. It's world famous. It's called the Pike Place Fish Market. Well, the Pike Place Fish Market, if you've ever been there or if you've ever heard about it, has a completely different working environment. And it's kind of a boring job to begin with, and a physically demanding job at that. And sometimes it's just one of those jobs that a lot of people, if they're fishmongers who typically work at a fish market, they just try to get through their shift. They do their job, but they don't do a lot more. Or maybe they work very hard, but it's just not that rewarding. Well, this was something that when John Christensen came and viewed, it was an entirely different workplace than all the other workplaces around it. For one thing, when these people transported their fish, they often threw them from one part of the shop to another. Now, it wasn't chaotic. It wasn't just that there were fish flying everywhere. As a matter of fact, the person who was about to throw the fish would call out to the person who was supposed to catch it, "One fish flying to Boston," and then the whole group of workers that were out there in chorus would say, "One fish flying to Boston," or "5 crabs flying off to London," and they would say, "5 crabs flying off to London." And the customers would get involved with that, and it became something of a fun workplace. As a matter of fact, they intended for it to be a fun workplace, because just a few years earlier, it was like every other fish market in that big Pike Place market area. They just went in, they did their job, and they went home. And so the owners, the managers, the people who worked there got together, and they wanted to figure out what could they do to make it a better work environment and a better place for the customers to come to. And it's interesting because one of their goals was to make the Pike Place Fish Market world famous. And they were able to do that, but how? Well, there were 4 areas that John Christensen came across that he believed he identified from this plan that they had implemented that made them not only world famous, but made this a place of joy to come to. And so here are the four areas. The first is you cannot always choose your job or work environment, but you can choose your attitude. You see, a lot of people just go to their job with a bad attitude to begin with. Maybe it didn't start that way. Maybe when they began, they were fresh and excited. They saw the potential of their job. Maybe it was their first job, and they were just so glad to be part of something, and they had an enthusiasm. But as you know, enthusiasm wanes through the years, and especially if you go to work for a company where the employees who've been there for a number of years have already lost their enthusiasm. There's a verse in the New Testament. It's found in Galatians chapter 4 and verse 15. Paul's writing to the churches in the Galatian region, and he simply asks them, "What has happened to all your joy?" See, the churches had kind of lost their enthusiasm. They'd kind of just bogged down with the everyday life. We do that in the workplace. And so the people at the Pike Place Fish Market decided to return enthusiasm, to change the attitudes of the employees. But how do you do that? Well, that's where the next step comes in, and that's have fun. We all have to go to work, but you don't have to have an environment that is just all business. Now, obviously, one of the most famous sayings that I've ever heard is the business of business is business. We are there to conduct business and make a profit for the people that we work for, or if we own our own business, to make a profit so that we can make a decent living and our employees can make a decent living. But we can have fun while we're doing that. And so they created a very light-hearted atmosphere. As I said, they started throwing their fish from the fish display over to the counter where somebody would catch it in a wrapper, and they would wrap it up, and they would have the whole group involved with it for two reasons. One, it's more fun when everybody's involved with it. So when the one person said one fish flying to Boston, and they all came in chorus, one fish flying to Boston, well, it alerted them to the fact there's about to be a fish flying through the air, but it also called attention to something that didn't happen anywhere else, and the customers loved it. As a matter of fact, oftentimes the customers would ask if they could be involved with it. And sometimes they would come in their nice business clothes, and they would be trying to catch a fish over at the counter, and of course everybody just really enjoyed that. There was a lot of humor in that, and a lot of people went away from that experience just exhilarated. You might not think so, but really something like that, when it's a fun atmosphere, it's contagious, as is attitude. But part of having a contagious good attitude is having fun at what you do. And so they added fun to the workplace. That was the second step. The third step, I believe, is very important, and that was to make their customers' day. It wasn't just to say, "What do you want?" take their order, give it to them, take their money, and they'd be on their way. They started to become vitally interested in their customers. They gave them a friendly greeting. They wanted to find out how they could help them, and then they set about to helping them find just exactly what they wanted. Sometimes people don't know, and sometimes that aggravates the employees because they're busy, aren't they? Employees sometimes figure out why they're busy, or have a problem figuring out why they're busy. They forget. I can remember when I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I was a cook there for 5 years and a shift supervisor during high school and college. That kind of helped pay some of my expenses through college, and I enjoyed it. It was a fun work environment. But sometimes you would get people who were just way too serious. A cook would be getting his part of the kitchen cleaned up, and then all of a sudden a customer would come in just before closing and order more chicken, and that cook would have to get his workspace dirty again. Oh, he'd be mad. Sometimes I was the cook that got mad. Or sometimes the young ladies at the counter who who took the orders, they very rarely had the guys out front. They found out very quickly that the ladies interacted with customers much better than the guys, and so they had our young ladies out front, and we had friendly young ladies, but I will say when it came time to closing and they had gotten their part of the lobby cleaned up, and then somebody came in just before closing and ordered something and sat down at their clean tables and spilled crumbs on their clean floor, sometimes they got really mad. And I can remember we had to be reminded from time to time, this is what you're here for. You are here to serve the chicken you cook to customers. You are here to sell this product to the customers that you're waiting on at the counter. It's the customers that bring in the money. We have a supply that they have a demand for. And when those two meet, and they meet well, then you have a profitable business. But sometimes we forget that. And sometimes employees at all companies forget that their customer is the reason they're there. And they get mad at the customers, and they treat the customers as if they're doing a special favor for them. But they always let the customer know, you're inconveniencing me somehow. You don't want to go back to a place like that. But the Pike Market Fish Place, or the Pike Place Fish Market, was different. They became vitally interested in their customers, and they got to know their customers. And they were setting out to give them an experience that would be enjoyable so that they'd want to come back. That's good for business. And this brings us to the fourth step, and this was a very important part of what John Christensen found out they were doing. It was to be present. In other words, you don't just zone out. So many times when we're at work, when we don't have a task that's immediately demanding our attention, maybe we've just gotten through with what we were supposed to do, and now we're on our cell phones, or we're taking a break, or we're doing something that's just whiling away the time. That was something that they trained their workers not to do. And John Christensen noticed as he sat and observed them that when the people had finished, the workers had finished whatever task they were on, they started scanning the crowd. And they were looking for people who looked like they might need help. And it wasn't always people who might be potential customers. Sometimes it was just somebody that was there, and they would give them, that was not interacting with anybody, and they would give them a friendly greeting. They would ask them questions that went beyond just how you doing, fine, but they seemed genuinely interested. And they built up relationships that way, and a loyalty that way. They were present, they were aware of what was going on outside of their little world, and they started paying attention to what other people need. And by doing that, by doing these four things, by choosing their attitude, by having fun, by making the customer's day, and by being aware, being present in the moment, they became world famous. I saw a newscast recently, but it was from several years back, and the old owner of the Pike Place Fish Market was selling his business. He could have sold it for a lot of money to different people, but he went to his employees and he arranged a really good deal for them because this old man loved the people he worked with. And he knew that they loved the business, and he wanted to continue it in the same way. It became an event to go to the Pike Place Fish Market, and it is world famous. And the people who work there do have fun when they're working there. It's true that they, just like you and I, have bad days, and they have days that they're just trying to get through their day because of something else that may be going on in their life. But for the most part, they go to work and it's an enjoyable experience. And so this 75% of their waking hours of their life is spent doing something that they love to do. Now, how would this help you and I? The workplace potential is obvious. If we can apply these principles to our own workplace, we can see, it may take some creativity and some thought and imagination, but we can see that something like this would have a pretty immediate and often drastic improvement to our work environment. Change our attitudes, and your attitude can change the attitude of others. When I was working at Kentucky Fried Chicken all those years ago, I noticed if somebody came in happy, that generally was infectious. If they came in mad, that generally was infectious, especially if it was the manager that was coming in with an attitude, good or bad. And it spread through very quickly. When it was a bad attitude, it was like a cancer. And it made everybody miserable for being there. But when it was a good attitude, people then enjoyed it. People wanted to be around you. People enjoyed teasing one another and interacting with one another and helping one another in their work so that the work would be more efficient. And then you start considering your customers and the fact that this is really the reason that you're here. And it just changes the workplace. But this will also help with your family. Your family may just be a set of 4 or 5 strangers. Maybe you don't have any kids, or the kids are gone, and it's just you and your spouse, and you're kind of drifting apart. You're doing your own thing. You're always on your phone or distracted by something or another because the people you're around you become comfortable with, and they're comfortable with doing their own thing, but it's really, quite frankly, not much fun, and there's not much joy in the situation. Have you seen churches that have just kind of died because their enthusiasm waned, and they just were going through the motions? They were showing up for worship because they were checking off something on their list, go to church. But the sooner it was over, the better. And they didn't stick around and visit with people afterward. The congregations I've gone to, I've been very fortunate. Since I've been out of college for over 40 years, when the worship service is over, the Bible classes are over, people stick around for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and more. Sometimes you think, well, these people never go home. They enjoy one another. There's enthusiasm. These types of things are absolutely vital for the church, the Lord's church. And there's a key there as well. It's found in the book of Colossians. In the 3rd chapter, starting in verse 23, it says this: "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men, since you know you'll receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you're serving." You see, when we get that attitude, not just when we're around religious people, but sometimes especially when we're not around religious people, when we remember it's the Lord we're serving, well, we give an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. We are present in the fact that we're aware of other people. We're aware that some people are really sad. Some people are distressed and in need of help. And if we're aware, because we are working for them as working for the Lord and not for men, then we want to go out of our way to help them. Most of our experiences when it comes to shopping are like one of my favorite economist teachers passed on. He said when he shopped, it was like a good bank robbery. You're in, you're out, nobody gets hurt. And that's the way most people are when they're shopping, when they're doing things. Now, I realize some people savor shopping and savor it way too much, but for most of us men, you'll understand the quicker you're out of there, the better. But then there are some areas you go to and you enjoy it. You know the people maybe that work there. Or it's an area that you really like. Maybe it's a sporting goods store, hunting and fishing store, hardware store, and maybe you've gotten to know some of the employees there. You're interested in it. We need to find an interest in everything we do, if not in the thing, in the people. and we'll be able to get rid of that bank robber mentality. And when you think about it, it really is, because you're just taking and you're not giving anything back. John Christensen co-authored a book called Fish. It's just the word fish with an exclamation point behind it. He co-authored that with two gentlemen. One's name was Harry Paul, the other Stephen London. If you haven't read that book, it's a short book. I read it in about an hour and a half. I intend to read it probably again and again. It's something I really enjoyed. Some dear friends gave it to me recently to read. And I really appreciate them for doing so, because it is a fascinating concept, and it is a message that can change your life, not just in your work, but in your relationships, in your church life, in everything you do. But again, these 4 things, would they help you? You can't always choose your situation and your circumstances, but first you can choose your attitude. You can choose to have fun. You can choose to make people's day, and you can choose to be present in the moment and be aware of other people's needs. This is a great concept. I really am in John Christensen's debt for writing this book. He's got a series, I believe, of videos that are worldwide famous in and of themselves. Have helped a lot of businesses and corporations. I believe he travels around and presents these things, or used to, but what a concept. It'll help. It's helped a lot of people already. I believe it'll help you as well. And again, the reason is because it really is scripturally based. Have you felt that your joy has waned? Could the Apostle Paul ask you, what's happened to all your joy? You can change it. You can choose to change your attitude, if you will. You might not be able to change everybody. You're not going to be able to change the world, but you can change your little corner of the world. And what a difference that will make. I appreciate your tuning in. If this is something that helped you, do me a favor and like it. It'll help get it around to more people. If you share it, certainly that will help. If you subscribe, that will help as well. But if you enjoy this type of content, let me encourage you to subscribe. I try to have different subjects, sometimes very serious, sometimes very lighthearted, but hopefully always Christ-centered and Bible-based, and something that hopefully will help you in your life. But thank you for listening today. I hope we'll see you again next time. God bless.